Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will present for the subject Islam in Southeast Asia, and the title for our group is The Role and Contribution of Islamic Institution in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam.
As for my part, I will present about the introduction first. Southeast Asia may be divided into two regions which call mainland Southeast Asia, which includes Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia and Vietnam. And for the insular Southeast Asia, which includes Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Indonesia and Philippines. Cambodia has a population over 15 million people, the majority of whom are ethnic Khmers. A minor percentage of the population is Vietnamese, Muslim Chams, Chinese or Hill tribes. The Cham ethnic group accounts for over 18% of the country Muslim. The rise of Islam in Southeast Asian countries is more natural now that the countries have gained independence, and also because Islam is the religion of the majority population, particularly in the Malay world, while there is a significant Muslim population in Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia and the Philippines.
Next is I will explain about problem statement. Compared to the Muslim minorities living in maritime Southeast Asia, the Muslim communities that live on the mainland of Southeast Asia, specifically Indochina, are much smaller. Muslims make up approximately 1% of the population of Vietnam and Laos, 4% of Cambodia and Myanmar, where they make up around 5% of population. It is abundantly clear that the so-called minority problem cannot be ignored from the state point of view, because finding a solution to it is essential for integration of the nation.
These are the research question and research objective for our research. Let's go through the research question first. The first one is, how did Islam spread in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam? Second one, what are the challenges faced by the Islamic community in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam? And the last one is, how did Islam affect Southeast Asia countries? Research objective. The first one is to understand the spreadness of Islam in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. The second one is to identify the challenges faced by Muslim in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. And the last one is to understand how did Islam affect Southeast Asia countries.
For the scope of the study, the purpose of this research is to look into the role of Islamic institutions in Islamic dakwah in Cambodia, Vietnam and Laos. We gain a better knowledge of the critical function of Islamic institutions and organizations in Islamic society as a result of our research. This research also looks at how Muslims spread in Cambodia, Vietnam and Laos, as well as the obstacles that the Islamic community face.
My name is Nik Nur Husna Amira binti Nik Mustafar, number metric 1192984. I will explain on significance of the study. This study will shed light on Islam and Muslim society in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. In addition, this study will help society understand the value of Islam and how Muslim society contributes to the community of Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam in deepening the knowledge of Islam, and how can they implement all the knowledge in their daily life to understand it better. Moreover, the findings of this study will benefit future research into the history of Islam and Muslim society in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. Next is a definition of the term. Firstly, Islamic institution. Institution or organization are systems that affect one another. If one of the subsystems is damaged, it will affect the other subsystems. Another definition is a group of people who are devoted to this noble calling and who aim to foil all external threats to their organization to maintain strict organizational norms and values. The aims and objectives and the nature of Islamic Dawah organization all over the world are largely the same. The ideas will be useful to those who take calling people to Allah's way seriously, no matter where they are geographically located. Another one is Islamic Dawah. Dawah is an Arabic word which has the literal meaning of issuing a summons or making an invitation. This term is often used to describe how Muslims teach teach others about the belief and practice of their Islamic faith. Da'wah, also known as one of the means to propagate Islam to others. In modern Islamic theology, da'wah serves to invite all people, both Muslim and non-Muslim, to understand how the worship of Allah is described in the Quran and practiced in Islam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siti Aqilah binti Hamdan and my number matric is 1192680. I would like to present research methodology. First, research design. This study is a descriptive study, a scientific method which involves observing and describing the behavior of a subject without influencing it in any way. The research that we used to study this study was a qualitative descriptive study method that was one of the types of study that were included in the qualitative type of study. Number 2, research sampling. In this study, the researcher used purposive sampling to obtain the sample. Sampling is the process of choosing units such as individuals or groups of people from a population of interest in order to very generalize our findings to the population from which the sample was chosen. Sampling is the way to take sample. Next, data collection. The writer chose the method by using written materials and libraries research for the qualitative method to obtain the data. Number 4, data analysis. This study discusses the data analysis that was gathered via written materials and library research through books, newspapers, journals, articles, and others. We use content analysis as a method of data analysis. The goal of the content analysis is to describe about Islam and Muslim society in Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam.
Now, I will explain on Chapter 2, the advent of Islam in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. Geographically, Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam are situated in the fastest growing region in the world, positioned alongside the dynamic economies of neighboring China and Thailand. The population of contemporary Southeast Asia is around 618 million spread across 11 countries. An estimated 40% are Muslim and 21% are Christian. The actual timing and introduction of Islamic religion and religious practice to Southeast Asia is somewhat of a debate. European historians have argued that it came through trading contacts with India, whereas some Southeast Asian Muslim scholars claim it was brought to the region directly from Arabia in the Middle East. Other scholars claim that Muslim Chinese who were engaged in trade introduced it. Whatever the source, the scholars acknowledge that Muslim influence in Southeast Asia is at least 6 centuries old or was present by 1400. An overview of Islam in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam may all be classified as Indochina nations. Firstly, Cambodia. Cambodia, formerly known as Campuchia, was granted independence from France in 1953, while the population was predicted to be 7.1 million in 1975, but by the middle of 1919, it has risen to 9.3 million. The Shan people follow Islam as their religion. Around 400,000 Muslims, or 4.3% of the population, are reported to live in the nation. In 1975, Muslims made up roughly 35% of the population in Kampong Cham province, which has the highest concentration of Muslims, and 20% of the population of Kampong Chinang province. The government promoted the founding of the Majlis Shaykhul Islam Cambodia, a national representative organization, in February 1994, and the Cambodia Islamic Association CIA in April. Next, Laos. Laos was a French protectorate for 61 years, starting in 1893. Laos proclaimed independence after the ending of the Japanese occupation, which lasted from 1940 to 1945. Around 950 people reside in the Vientiane area. In Savannakhet, there are around 10 Muslims, and in Luang Prabang there are another 10. The majority of Muslims, around 750, are of Indian descent. The remaining 200 people are Cham and Laotian. Their understanding of Islam is quite limited. Only Muslims over the age of 60 are conversant with Islam's doctrines and practice. The middle generation, aged 25 to 45, has the same level of education as the entire population. Their understanding of Islam is basically non-existent. The most significant and required materials are reading material, and some local Muslims should be educated as teachers. The Laos Muslim Association is a registered organization with the Ministry of the Interior. Lastly, Vietnam. In Vietnam, there are around 41,000 Muslims. The Cham ethnicity makes up nearly all of the Vietnam's Muslims. Some Muslims in Ho Chi Minh City are ethnic Chinese or sprung from Arab or Indian ancestors. Ethnic Vietnamese who have converted to Islam, mostly in the Phan Rang region, make up a tiny minority of Muslims. There is also a sizable number of rural Chams who are known as Old Muslim. They cannot be called Muslim since their Islamic practice is so atypical, comprising a considerable proportion of Hindu and Buddhist belief and practice. For the Muslim of Vietnam, the 1960 were a difficult time. Many limitations on Muslims and Islamic practice were enforced, but in 1978, the government judged that Muslims were not a threat and lifted some of the restrictions. However, Muslims have been authorized to receive a foreign donation for the repair or extension of the mosque since 1989.
The next slide is about the spread of Islam in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. Islamic teachings began to spread throughout Southeast Asia about the 13th century, but the actual date of Islam's advent in Southeast Asia is unknown. Muslims have been among the numerous foreigners dealing in Southeast Asia since at least the 9th century, and a few Southeast Asians have journeyed to the Middle East to study. When compared to Muslim minorities in maritime Southeast Asia, Muslim minorities on the mainland of Southeast Asia, specifically Indochina, are a small, marginal, and often ignored community. Muslims make up roughly 5% of the population in Myanmar, which is Burma, 4% in Cambodia, or known as Kampuchea, and 1% in Vietnam and Laos. So, because of their tiny size and lack of interaction with maritime Southeast Asia, little is known about their predicament. However, some basic statistical data is available, particularly for Muslim institutions such as mosques, madrasah, and Muslim organizations in these four nations. As for the conclusions, today Muslims are minorities in number of nations through the world. They are apparent in certain places such as Thailand and the Philippines, but are minor in the others. For example, like Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. Because of its many beginnings, the Islam that reached Southeast Asia was quite diverse. Obviously, from the standpoint of the state, the minority problem cannot be ignored since its resolutions is vital to national integration. When it comes to dealing with minorities, states often use two main strategies, which is assimilation and accommodation.
Next, social development of Muslim community in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. Number 1. Social development of Muslim community in Cambodia. The Muslim community in Cambodia, often known as Cham, is descended from Central Vietnamese refugees who left the ancient kingdom of Champa 500 years ago. Many Cham live in poverty and have lower level of education, greater rates of illiteracy, and worse health index. Like other Cambodians, the majority of Chams are farmers and fishermen who reside in rural areas. Some members of the Wurst community and other minority groups reportedly continue to view the Chams with suspicion and superstition as purported practitioners of black magic. The Cham Muslim community continue to face barriers to full integration into society. Number 2. Social development of Muslim community in Laos. Muslim community in Laos, our estimate population of Lao PDR was 5.62 million as of March 2005. The rapid growth of the nation's economy has been blamed for the gradual improvement in poverty alleviation and subsequent fall in poverty during the previous 15 years. Across all of the nation's various regions and ethnic groups, gender inequality continue to be a major problem. There is lack of knowledge concerning maternal health, adequate nutrition, and education disparities among women in rural Lao PDR. The Lao PDR is a people democratic state and are used to further the interests of the country's multi-ethnic population, as assures that the state won't discriminate against people depending on their ethnicity and give ethnic groups the freedom to uphold their custom and advance their culture. And lastly, social development of Muslim community in Vietnam. Approximately 1/3 of Muslims in Vietnam are of other ethnic groups. Islam is principally practiced by the Cham people, an Austronesian minority ethnic group. There is also a population in the southwest near the town of Chak that identifies as being of mixed ethnic origins, like Chams, Khmer, Malay, Minang, Vet, Chinese, and Arab, and practice Islam. The earliest solid proof of the spread of Islam, however, come from Chinese writing from the Song dynasty, which mention how the Cham became acquainted with Islam in the late 10th and early 11th centuries. Furthermore, the Mongols' success in spreading Islam during their brief conquest, but it was never widespread enough to pose a threat to the Vietnams.
Economic development of Muslim community in Cambodia. The Cambodian economy grew at a rate of more than 10% per year between 2004 and 2007, with the government and tourist industries driving expansion and inflation remained low. In 2008, the economy slowed slightly and rising food and gasoline prices drove inflation into double digits. The economy is strongly dollarized and the two currencies are interchangeable. Cambodia is significantly reliant on foreign aid, with donor support accounting for over half of the central government's budget. Next, economic development of Muslim community in Laos. The Lao remain extremely poor and isolated for much of the 1970s and early 1980s as a result of years of a strive and inward-looking policy centered on a central planning system. Under the new economic mechanism, the government began decentralizing governance and implementing market-oriented reforms in 1986. Price controls were lifted, currency rates were harmonized, foreign and intra-provincial trade was increased, and private enterprise in agriculture and manufacturing was fostered during the name's early reforms. In the 1990s, structural changes were extended through a legislative program that laid the groundwork for market-based laws and private sector development. Economic development of Muslim community in Vietnam. Vietnam has been spared a more severe impact from the East Asian financial crisis in 1997. Nonetheless, the crisis has exposed major structural inefficiencies in Vietnam's economy, as well as a loss of impetus as the first round of economic reforms come to end. Following the East Asian recessions, Vietnam's economic posture has been cautious, focusing on macroeconomic stability rather than growth. Despite the country's shift toward a more market-oriented economy, the Vietnamese government maintains tight control over key sectors of the economy, including banking, state-owned firms, and foreign commerce. Okay, Muslims and politics in Cambodia. Cham, the majority of whom are Sunnis with Malay influences, were massacred and forced to flee the Cambodia. The majority of them are speak Khmer and Javanese. As previously stated, under the Khmer rule dictatorship, both Cham Muslims and Cambodians suffer the same fate. Differing perspectives on the prevalence of prejudice continue to exist, preventing Cham Muslims from fully integrating into Cambodian culture. Cham Muslim community continues to face barriers to full integration into society, and some Buddhist and other minority groups continue to view the Cham with suspicion and superstition as purported practitioners. Next, Muslims and politics in Laos. There are a few Muslims in the area. They are primarily Arab, South Asians, and Cham in origin. Theravada Buddhism is practiced by the majority of lowland, low and some midland communities. The Muslim community provided only rudimentary educational opportunities for their children. Animist religious practices are popular among upland and most midland ethnic groups, with religious activities centered on protection or guardian spirits typically associated with places or with a family or clan. Next, Muslims and politics in Vietnam. The existence of Muslim communities in south-central Vietnam is first documented in the 8th century. Muslim community lived in a modern-day southern Vietnam between the 10th and 11th centuries. Muslim population in Vietnam is diverse, with the Cham people constituting the largest and most visible group in modern Vietnam.
As a conclusion for Chapter 3, the Buddhist ethos and culture that are shared by the vast majority of the population, who are also of the different ethnicity, are dominant in Cambodia and Thailand, where Muslim ethnic minorities are present. Although religion plays a less significant role in Vietnamese culture than it does in other countries, Muslims are nevertheless distinct from dominant ethnic group, and there is official attitude that is not particularly favorable toward religion. Desire and effort to perform Islam in a way that will make them respectable as a community. Muslims in Cambodia have benefited enormously from their political, economic, and educational and empowerment.
Next is about Islam education and educational institution in Cambodia, Laos and Vietnam. Around the 13th century, Islamic doctrines become more widely disseminated in Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia comprises 11 different countries and stretches from the easternmost part of India to China. The region is typically separated into mainland and island zone. The mainland, which consists of the countries of Burma, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, is an extension of the Asian continent. Next is Islamic education in Cambodia. Most of Cambodia's Muslim population is Cham and Malay, with a smattering of Pakistanis, Arab, and Kabulis, also known as Afghans. To this very day, young Cham people continue to travel to Kelantan in the hopes to gain an education in Islamic doctrine. One of them was named Lai Musa, who would one day become known as Imam Musa. Imam Musa began instructing the people of the hamlet where his wife was from in translating and interpreting the Holy Quran. Imam Musa provided training for those individuals who desired to further their education. Even courses on economic and politics were part of Imam Musa's curriculum. Islamic education in Laos. Muslims may choose to live up to 5 kilometers away from the heart of the city. The Islamic world has a limited knowledge base. Only Muslims at least 60 years old completely understand the religion doctrines and practice. The knowledge of Islam is practically non-existent. Since Muslims make up such a small group, the government does not show any interest in or connection with the Muslim community. The Laos Muslim Association has it registered with the Ministry of the Interior. It is discouraged to have open communication with organizations based in other countries. Under these conditions, the prospects for Islamic preaching known as Dawah are extremely grim. Islamic education in Vietnam. Cham is nearly all Vietnamese Muslim. Ho Chi Minh City Muslim are ethnic Chinese, Arab, and Indian. In Phan Rang, many ethnic Vietnamese have converted to Islam. 41,000 Muslims live in Vietnam. Their Islamic practices are unorthodox, comprising a large proportion of Hindu and Buddhist doctrine and practice that they cannot be called Muslim. The 1960s were easy for Vietnam Muslims. The government imposed several restrictions on Muslim and Islamic practice, but in 1978 it judged they weren't a threat and lifted some of them.
Next, madrasa and Islamic schools in Cambodia. Throughout Cambodia's history of Islamic education, the society has used surahs, mosques, and even the Tuan's home as classrooms. In the provinces of Kampong Chnang, Pursat, Battambang, Siem Reap, and Kampong Tong, there was at least one school in every hamlet along the Tonle Sap River and around the Tonle Sap Lake in 2008 and 2009. The Madrasah Hafiz Al-Quran, located in Turia district of Kampong Cham province, was the first Islamic school created following the Pol Pot regime, then followed by the Dubai School in KM9, then Darul Aitam, the Qura, the Madrasah Hajjah Rohimah Tambicik, and the Mahad Al-Muhammadi. Madrasah Darussalam was established on 22 November 2014, gained recognition through the Tay Ninh Muslim community representative appointed by the local government, Tay Ninh Province, Vietnam. It was established with the goal of providing Islamic education and assisting Vietnamese Muslims in learning and understanding the Quran as well as studying the teachings of Islam. Pakhtuns and Tamil Muslims worship at the Jamia Masjid Mosque in Viet Thanh Center. Maulvi Kamuruddin, the mosque imam, is a Tamil who addresses the Friday congregations in both Urdu and Tamil, switching between the two languages every week. It includes a tiny maktab attached to it where children are taught Arabic and about Islam in a Lao language medium. I'll talk about Islamic institutions and organizations in Cambodia. In terms of community organization, Muslims are under the Cambodian Islamic Council (CIC), also known as Majlis Agama Islam Cambodia (MAIC). In terms of religion, this Majlis Mufti is divided into 4 sections: education, Baitul Mal, administration, and mosque development. In terms of social organization, the Muslim community is free to form any society or association. There are 4 organizations that are built. Firstly, the Cambodia Islamic Association Khmer Islamic of Cambodia Association, next Kingdom of Kampuchea Islamic Association, and Association of the Muslim Cham of Cambodia. For the Islamic institutions and organizations in Vietnam and Laos, in Vietnam, with 7 members, the Muslim Representative Committee of Ho Chi Minh City was founded in 1991, while an organization with a similar objective was founded in An Giang Province in 2004. In addition, beginning in 2009, the Regional Islamic Dawah Council of Southeast Asia and the Pacific (RISYEP) partnered with the International Islamic University of Malaysia (IIUM) to hold Islamic training courses in Ho Chi Minh City, Tay Ninh, Ninh Thuan, and An Giang. Lastly, the Muslim Association of Laos was recently formed by Tamil Muslim in Laos, as well as Paktun and Cambodian Muslims living in the country, to monitor Muslim community matters and to communicate with the government.